Hello, romance book lovers. Welcome to Tales from the Heart. I'm Jenna Harte, and each week I post new episodes from my stories of crime and passion. And right now we're listening to With This Ring I Thee Kill, Book 3 of the Valentine Mysteries. This week is Episode 6, Chapter 6. Now, if you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get With This Ring I Thee Kill from your favorite ebook retailer, or you can save by buying direct from me. Now, With This Ring I Thee Kill is the third book in the Valentine Mystery series, and if you missed book 1, Deadly Valentine, you can listen by checking early episode postings, or if you'd like to read it, you can get Deadly Valentine for free at my website, jennaharte.com. Book 2, Old Flames Never Die, is also available as early episode postings or available at your favorite ebook retailer or for less through my shop. Now, Tales from the Heart is posted to podcast platforms and YouTube each week. These episodes are edited to censor out the intimate bits. But if you'd like to have a version that includes the spicier bits, plus early access to behind-the-scenes information about the stories, bonus content, and more, please join me over on Ream. Learn more at reamstories.com/Jenna Harte. Now, never miss the mystery or romance by hitting the subscribe button, and remember that all details and links you might need are just a click away in the description. Now, snuggle up, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Chapter 6. Gustav arranged to have his friend, Joe Winston, meet with Jack and Tess later that evening. Jack reluctantly brought the ring home with him, hoping that Cal and Tim didn't have any friends watching them. Once back at the penthouse, Cora retired to take a nap, and Tess went to her office, presumably to determine her career prospects. It was obvious to Jack that she didn't want to return to her law practice, but for some reason, the realization eluded her. He tried several times to discuss her options, but she resisted it. He went to his own home office. He logged on to his computer to review Brad's most recent reports. But the ring and its history distracted him. He went on the internet to find out what he could about the Tavernier and French blue diamonds. While details varied slightly, the information he found was consistent with what Gustave said. The uncut diamond was sold to Louis XIV by Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who was later mauled by dogs. Jack laughed. Cora got the story right after all. Louis cut the diamond into the French blue, which was stolen during his grandson's reign. There was no mention of any other jewels using blue diamonds from the original Tavernier stone. The one story that piqued Jack's interest was a jewel theft in England in 2004. The owners of the gems indicated the jewels belonged to Marie Antoinette, who'd given them to her maid to sneak out of the palace. The maid went to England, but Marie never left Paris. Gustave had that right too. Jack's search of royal jewels led him to the wedding of the Prince of England, which in turn made Jack think of his own wedding. In all the commotion around the ring, he and Tess had forgotten about their own nuptials. Shutting down his computer, he headed to her office. She napped on the chaise chair set by the window overlooking the Jefferson Memorial. She changed into shorts and a tank top that were as sexy as the lingerie she wore. He slipped off his shoes and quietly lay down next to her.
Are you staring?
Sleep laced her voice. Admiring. She moved closer to him, slipping into his embrace.
You always say the right things, Valentine.
When I'm sufficiently inspired. Her head tilted up and she kissed his chin. I see you're getting a lot done. He pulled her closer.
Letting the gray matter rest.
Maybe you can rev it up again. I realize that in all the excitement around your ring, we haven't picked a date or started planning our wedding.
We haven't.
How about we go out to dinner, make some wedding plans, and then visit Gustave's friend?
Sounds like a date.
When Jack pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant, Tess started to laugh.
I haven't had crab in years.
3 years ago, except you were with Brad then.
And you were with Candy, Cindy,
Chrissy.
Chrissy. Right. She had the biggest pair of
Your insecurity is showing.
feet.
Jack laughed. He looped his arm over her shoulder and escorted her through the dingy crab house's door.
Do you remember we danced that night?
She remembered looking into the bluest green eyes she'd ever seen the night they danced. She also remembered the punch of emotion and then guilt for desiring her fiancé's best friend.
Yes.
I loved you then.
She shook her head.
I can't imagine why.
That's one of the things I love most about you. You have no idea of your own appeal.
That's what you love about me?
That and your pair of
Feet?
those two.
He gave her a quick kiss. From the outside, the crab house looked like a dive. Certainly not the type of place a man or woman of her and Jack's financial status would eat. But the shanty ambiance was part of the crab house charm. Tess stepped into the restaurant and inhaled the smell of crab, Old Bay seasoning, and fried fish. The jukebox was playing old-time rock and roll, as a young couple who probably hadn't been born when the song was released danced on the sawdust-covered concrete floor.
This is the real deal.
Tess sat down at a table with a butcher paper tablecloth and utensils consisting solely of a mallet and a knife.
Only the best for my gal.
Jack winked. They ordered 24 medium crabs, hush puppies, and 2 beers.
This brings back memories.
Tess said.
When I was at Georgetown, we came to places like this all the time.
Jack nodded.
I started coming here in high school.
You'd bring your dates here?
Nah, they always wanted fancy places in D.C. that I couldn't afford.
You can afford them now.
He smiled.
Yes, I can. And I enjoy them sometimes. Would you rather I take you to a fancy restaurant?
Tess shook her head.
No, in fact, I wonder if this place caters. It would be great for the wedding, and it would guarantee my parents wouldn't come. They'd be so horrified.
Jack laughed.
I can't wait to meet these people.
Be careful what you ask for.
They can't treat me much worse than Cora treats you.
He reached across the table to hold her hand.
Don't be so sure.
I don't care what anyone thinks as long as you're with me.
His smile sent the now familiar gooey feeling through her body.
I feel the same.
So how long does wedding planning take?
Jack asked, lifting his glass to his lips.
At least 6 months.
6 months?
He nearly choked on his beer.
Most places are booked that far in advance, especially nice places.
I wonder if Bert's Crab Shack hosts weddings.
He muttered.
But you're the expert.
Not really. My mother and Brad's mother did all the work last time. I didn't even pick my own dress. I should have known then it wasn't going work. How about New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve sounds romantic.
He said.
If we're going to wait that long, we might as well do Valentine's Day. It's more fitting.
It's a little over the top.
His lips puckered in annoyance.
I don't want to wait that long anyway.
We probably need some logistics first, like where we want the wedding. Do you want a church wedding?
I don't know.
Tess was already feeling a little overwhelmed.
That could be something to ask Helen about, although that would mean getting married in Jefferson Tavern. I have no problem with that. In fact, this might be a good time to work something else out.
What's that?
Tess sipped from her glass.
Where we live.
Do we have to move?
Tess cocked her head to the side in confusion.
No, but right now we live at my homes. I mean, they're your homes now too, but they were mine to start with. I want to live in a place where you feel like it's yours too.
I like your homes.
Your house hasn't sold. We could live there if you wanted. It's in town.
Not too long ago you were whining about that house.
He gave her a sheepish smile.
I've matured since then.
I was actually thinking of taking it off the market and using it as a rental property.
Wise business investment.
You think so?
She was pleased at the compliment.
I do. I don't know why we didn't think of it before.
You saw it as a symbol of my ability to escape.
Tess reminded him.
But you took the ring and we consummated the deal.
Jack pointed out.
Even though the ring is sketchy at the moment, the consummation sealed it. There's no backing out now.
That just leaves one more issue, a prenup.
His eyes flashed with anger.
I'm sure your attorney has advised you that I should—
You're joking, right? You think I want your money?
He interrupted.
No,
She nearly laughed.
it's not for me, it's for you.
Me?
His anger immediately changed to bafflement.
You think you need to sign a prenup?
It's a good business decision.
He leaned forward, his piercing blue-green eyes steady on hers.
Getting married isn't business, and I don't need you to sign a prenup. If anyone needs to sign one, it would be me.
Tess snorted.
Yeah, my little house is worth millions.
Not your house, your trust.
She shifted in her seat.
In less than a year, it will be gone, so it doesn't matter.
You sure you want to let that go? It's a lot of money you could use for good. Surely it would make your parents crazy to donate it to world hunger or something.
She hadn't thought of that. It could be fun, giving the trust her father hoped to have one day to all the people he loathed. Greenpeace, Amnesty International.
Yes, but I would be going back on my vow. They would give me a great big, I knew you'd take it.
It's up to you, Tess. I have no need for the money. You have no need for it.
She shifted uncomfortably again.
Except I feel like I'm entering this marriage without providing my fair share.
He frowned.
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm not working right now except a few consulting gigs with the police. My house isn't worth very much. In the meantime, you're bringing 2 homes and a gargantuan income.
Yeah, but I'm bringing Cora too. The houses offset that.
She smiled, but didn't want to let the issue go.
You've been serious all day and now you're making fun.
I don't see the situation like you do.
You would if it were reversed.
He nodded.
You're probably right, but you're not going to use it. Get out of marrying me. If you feel you need to buck up, then get a job.
He was right, of course. If only she could motivate herself to reopen her practice. The waitress arrived, dumping a tray full of blue crabs covered in Old Bay seasoning on the table.
Your hush puppies will be right out. Do you want another beer?
Actually, I'd like a diet drink.
Tess said.
I'll take some water.
Jack added. Jack held up his mallet. Tess held hers and they tapped them together in a toast.
Bon appetit,
Tess said. Jack pulled a leg off the crab and brought his mallet down on the thick shell to crack it open.
I think down the hatch is more fitting to this establishment. Jack maneuvered the car down Route 1. He regretted not taking the Washington Parkway when he was forced to stop at every light. The only things more prevalent on Route 1 than stoplights were convenience stores. Finally, he saw the turn that took him off the congested road and immediately into an established neighborhood. The street was lined with brick ranchers built in the 1950s, similar to the one they visited Ricky in.
Here it is.
Tess pointed to the right.
2932.
Jack parked along the street.
Do you think he'll know anything?
Tess asked. Jack took her hand as they walked up the brick path to the house. I don't know. I get the feeling that if Mr. Winston doesn't have any clues, we may be out of luck unless the police can get something out of Tim and Cal.
Here's hoping Mr. Winston knows something then.
Jack knocked on the door. It was opened by an elderly man with gray hair flying around his head, as if he had stuck his finger in a light socket. Mr. Winston? Jack asked.
That's me.
I'm Jack Valentine, and this is Tess Madison. Gustav spoke to you on the phone earlier about help in learning about a ring.
Yes, I remember.
He stepped back, allowing Tess and Jack into his home. He led them through the living area. It was a shrine to all things old and royal. Pictures of long-dead kings and queens lined the walls. Display cases held antique trinkets and doodads.
It's like a museum,
Tess whispered.
Yes, my neighbors think I'm eccentric. That doesn't stop them from bringing their friends and relatives over for a look at Romanov jewels, though.
I'm sorry.
Tess said.
I didn't mean.
No worries.
He waved her apology away with a wrinkled hand.
I'm as old as dirt, but my hearing is still very good.
You have Romanov jewels? Jack asked.
Sure.
He pointed to a case.
One has a nick in it. I think it was in the corset of one of the girls when they were assassinated.
There was something a little creepy about that. Tess must have thought so too as she shuddered next to him.
Gustav tells me you have a ring that could have historical significance.
Yes. Twice someone used force to try to take it from us. And we believe a jeweler was murdered for it. We'd like to know why.
Many people want the old ring found in Granny's attic to be a Romanov jewel. Usually they're just old. The jewels, not the people. Of course, old jewels can have value, but they don't usually have a history.
I understand, Jack said.
What can you tell me about the ring?
Jack took the ring from his pocket. He'd debated about putting it back into the safe after meeting with Gustav, and instead showing Mr. Winston a photo, but decided Winston might need to see the real thing to make an assessment.
Gustav feels the blueness of the diamond may link it to the Hope Diamond.
That's unlikely, but let me look.
He took the ring.
I'm going to need my glasses.
He started to walk away.
I can hold it while you get them.
Jack reached for the ring.
Jack?
There was censure in her tone.
I understand,
Mr. Winston said.
If someone has already tried to steal it, it's probably best to be careful.
Jack felt silly being worried about an old man taking his ring. At the same time, he didn't want to let the ring out of his sight. Winston returned with his glasses. They sat around the dining room table as Winston studied the ring. His bushy brows grew together to form a single long gray caterpillar on his forehead.
Hold on.
He set the ring down on the table, then got up and went to the other room.
Odd.
Tess said. Jack shrugged. Winston came back in the room with a magnifying glass and a book. He turned on all the lights in the dining area and studied the ring again. When he looked up, Jack could swear he was nearly hyperventilating.
Where did you get this?
I bought it from a jeweler in Jefferson Tavern who bought it from an auction house.
We think the last owner was named Orlean.
Tess added. Winston sat back, his eyes twinkling.
No wonder Gustav was excited.
Want to share the excitement with us?
Jack asked.
Just a moment.
Winston took the small, old-looking book he'd brought back with him when he obtained the magnifying glass. He thumbed through the pages.
Ah, here.
He handed the book to Jack and Tess.
What is this?
It's a copy of a notebook owned by Sieur Pitot, court jeweler for Louis XIV of France. Many court jewelers wrote about their work. Here Pitot talks about Louis's purchase of the Tavernier diamond.
Which is now the Hope Diamond,
Jack said.
Yes. Interesting history, isn't it? Anyway, here.
Winston pointed to a paragraph.
This talks about how Pitot cut the stone from 112 carats to 67 carats. Later, his grandson Louis XVI would have it placed in the Golden Fleece, which was stolen. But you know that story. Here's what's interesting. Pitot talks about creating a ring with a blue diamond for Madame de Montespan. Turn the page.
Jack flipped the page, although he wasn't sure why it would matter. Everything was written in French. He'd have to take Mr. Winston's word about the content.
Oh my.
Tess said.
It's my ring.
Jack looked at a near-exact sketching of the ring he'd given Tess.
Those love potions she bought must have worked,
Winston said.
Love potions.
Tess looked up from the book to Mr. Winston.
Yes, she's long been thought to have been involved in the Affaire des Poisons. She rumored to have visited a witch for love potions.
So this ring belonged to a mistress of the king?
Tess asked.
Yes. Normally this ring wouldn't be important aside from the value of the gems. It's not officially a royal piece.
Jack looked to Winston.
It's not a royal jewel, but it's worth stealing.
This piece? Oh yes, it's worth killing for. The jewels alone are worth it. People have killed for much less,
Mr. Winston said.
Yes, but the thieves left a shop filled with jewels. They were after this ring,
Jack said, pointing at the ring.
Ah, that's what's most interesting. Whoever wants this ring must know its history, and is hoping the ring will work its magic.
Magic?
Jack and Tess said in unison. Winston nodded.
The legend is that when Madame Montespan was losing the king's interest, she took the ring to La Voisin, the witch who gave her the love potions.
La voisin? As in neighbor?
Tess asked.
Ah, you know your French?
Jack turned to her in surprise. She spoke French?
A little.
She admitted.
Actually, her name was Catherine Monvoisin, but she was nicknamed La Voisin. Madame Montespan asked La Voisin to do something to the ring to renew the king's interest. But she was a realist, too. She knew that eventually she'd lose her bloom, so she had the spell include that when the king was done with her, she'd still have her riches.
The ring is bewitched?
Jack wasn't unconvinced.
That's the rumor, and there is strong evidence to support it. Madame Montespan retired with over 500,000 francs, and as the ring was passed down, the family got richer and richer. The ring is said to bring good fortune to whoever owns it.
It doesn't work,
Jack quipped.
It's brought us nothing but danger.
Well, that too. This diamond was bought and cut at the same time as the stone that became the Hope Diamond, which is said to be cursed. Madame Montespan had a nasty bit of business being implicated in witchcraft and performing black masses.
Black masses?
Jack shook his head. The story was getting stranger and stranger. Odder still was the idea that Tim and Cal would believe all this hocus-pocus.
Her son spent time in jail for trying to dethrone the king. Later, Louise Marie de Bourbon, Louis XIV, and Madame Montespan's daughter lost much of her wealth in the Reign of Terror, and her husband was guillotined. Yet she got much of it back, including the ring. So, you see, before you can become rich, you need to suffer. Apparently.
I'm already rich,
Jack said, surprising himself. He rarely spoke of or flaunted his wealth with people he didn't know.
So were most of the ring's owners. But sometimes rich isn't rich enough,
Mr. Winston said.
You really think someone killed Mr. Feinstein and tried to kill us because they believe this ring is magic?
Sure. Why not? People believe all sorts of things. UFOs, ghosts. Why not this?
He has a point,
Tess said to Jack. Jack shook his head. It was crazy. Not that he thought Winston was lying. Most likely Winston was as nutty as people who believed in magic rings.
The question is, how did you end up with the ring? It disappeared, and many people thought it was stolen during the Nazi invasion of France. Hitler was known to like artifacts related to the occult.
Occult?
The witches, the black masses.
Jack looked horrified.
I thought I was buying an engagement ring.
Ah, you bought more than that.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Winston.
Jack rose from his seat and reached out to shake Mr. Winston's hand.
You've been very helpful.
No problem.
Mr. Winston stood as well.
It seems to me you aren't too thrilled to own that ring. If you're thinking of selling, I could probably find a buyer for you.
You wouldn't buy it for your collection?
Tess asked.
I'd love to, but I'm old enough that I'm not sure I could survive the hardship the ring would bring before the good fortune arrived.
So did you buy all that?
Jack asked as they walked back to the car.
About a magic ring?
Tess asked.
Yes.
You don't believe in magic?
Do you?
Jack looked at her, surprised that she might. Of the two of them, he was the one most likely to believe in magic, but the story they just heard was ludicrous.
I don't know. Sometimes when I think about us, I think it had to have been magic that brought you to me.
Jack stopped in his tracks as his heart swelled from his chest. He reached out, taking her arm and pulling her toward him.
What?
I think that's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me.
She grinned.
You must be rubbing off.
He gave her a quick kiss and then helped her into the car.
So you think people are trying to get the ring because it's magic?
Jack asked as they drove home.
I don't think the ring is really magic, but I think other people could believe it. Mr. Winston was right about that. People believe all sorts of things.
Jack pondered that and then shook his head.
You don't believe it?
It's crazy. I can't help but think there isn't more to it.
Like what?
I don't know,
He admitted.
So what should we do with the ring?
He took a deep breath.
If the ring is magic, I don't particularly want to endure any more hardship. And we don't need any more money, so I'm happy get rid of it. Unless you're attached to it. It is your engagement ring.
As long as the engagement stands and you show up at the altar, I don't mind getting rid of it.
Jack grinned.
That's two romantic things you've said to me within minutes.
Tess laughed.
We'll see. Planning a wedding brings out the worst in people. You may not love me anymore by the time nuptials begin.
I will always, always love you.
Now look who's being romantic.
Tess had never been a morning person. Not that she couldn't get up and out of bed early in the morning. Her difficulty was in being cheerful about it. But that was before Jack. He often made waking up very cheerful. On this morning, he was using one of her favorite techniques. She kept her eyes closed, savoring the way his lips caressed her neck. She sighed and lifted her hands, expecting to find warm, smooth skin. What she found was cool cloth. She opened her eyes. Not only did he have a dress shirt on, he also had a tie.
Hey, what's the deal?
He chuckled.
Just wanted a parting kiss.
She wrapped her fingers around the tie.
You can get more than that if you get rid of this thing.
I'd love nothing more than that, but I have a few things I need to take care of this morning.
Like what?
She was nearly pouting.
Like I want to get this ring back in the safe until we decide what to do with it, and I want to check on some projects at the office.
Brad will love that.
That's half the fun of going.
He gave her a quick kiss and then stood, straightening his tie.
I'll be back by lunch.
Suit yourself.
He started for the door but turned, and Tess hoped that he'd changed his mind and would get out of the tie and the rest of his suit.
I keep forgetting to mention Brad's parents are having a 4th of July party, and we're invited.
No.
Tess drew the sheet over her head to hide. First he teased her with erotic advances, and now he was tormenting her by talking about Brad's hateful parents.
That's what I told Brad, but he said to mention someone named Cameron Tambler or Tamble.
Tess poked her head from under the covers.
Tamblin?
Yes, Cameron Tamblin would be there. He seemed to think that would change.
When is the party?
Friday.
Jack's face was a mixture of a frown and curiosity.
Is it formal or just formal?
Who is Cameron Tamblin, and why would he be worth your subjecting yourself to Brad's parents, the people who made it so you couldn't work in D.C.?
I lived with Cameron.
Tess was excited at the prospect of seeing her good friend again.
God, it's been years.
Lived with? When?
Law school.
I thought you lived with Brad in law school.
I did 3rd year. Cameron and I lived together the first 2 years. Talk about fun and adventure. Cameron was like a whirling dervish, and Indiana Jones all wrapped up into one.
Something about the tone of Jack's had Tess looking up at him. His hands were on his hips, his face stern as it stared down at her. She felt like she was about to be reprimanded.
What?
You lived with one man and immediately went to live with another?
It was Tess's turn to be confused. And then it dawned on her. Jack was jealous. How about that? Jack wasn't really the jealous type. Even with her relationship with Daniel, Jack instinctively knew that he had nothing to worry about in terms of her affection for him. It was surprising what a little jealousy could do for a woman's ego.
Yes,
she said, wanting to draw out the experience. He gaped at her. She bit her lip to keep from laughing, but ultimately failed.
I don't see what's so funny.
No, I guess you don't.
Tess untangled herself from the sheets and crawled to the end of the bed where he stood.
Cameron is a woman.
It took a minute for the message to take. Then his eyes narrowed.
You enjoyed that, didn't you?
I sort of did.
Why?
He took a step towards her, and Tess could see a retaliation coming. She hoped it involved him getting out of his tie.
It was a boost to my ego to think you'd be jealous. I can't imagine why you would be, though.
I thought it was an old boyfriend.
You're not jealous of Brad.
Brad is gay.
He loomed over her, and Tess felt the chill of anticipation.
So you'd worry about an old boyfriend?
First loves never quite die.
Does that mean I need to read your social media profiles looking for your first love to redeclare her feelings for you?
He moved in for the strike. In an instant, she was on her back.
Don't you know, Tess, you are my first love.
She snorted.
Did you go to alpha male romance school to learn that?
He responded by kissing her senseless, the next moment when he was up and standing beside the bed.
I'll see you at lunch.
He straightened his tie.
Hey, it's not nice to start something you're not going to finish.
Oh, I'm going to finish it.
It sounded like a threat.
Later.
He winked at her and was out the door. Tess waited on the bed. Surely he'd be back to make good on his threat. But as the minutes ticked away, she realized he was gone. She frowned. How could he just walk away like that? Miffed, she decided she wasn't going to let him find her waiting for his return. First, she'd go for a run on the treadmill and take a cold shower to relieve the effects of his devastating kisses. After that, she wasn't sure what she'd do. She could continue the quest to figure out what the heck she was going to do with her career. Or she could plan a wedding. Or she could make some sort of chocolate confection. The thought of chocolate coaxed her from bed.
I won't even share it with Jack.
It would serve him right. After a run on the treadmill, a shower, and putting the last of the peanut butter balls in the freezer, Tess went to her office. She powered on her computer to check her email. Next, she researched Madame Montespan and La Voisin, but didn't learn much more than Mr. Winston told her and Jack the night before. The ring must have worked. She discovered that one of Madame Montespan's heirs eventually became king. But there was no mention of the ring. She also wondered if the ring had really disappeared or if it had been passed down within the family, making John Orlean a royal heir. Giving up, she decided to work on wedding plans. She knew her resistance to get started wasn't about having cold feet, but in having to deal with her parents. They probably won't come anyway, which made her feel better. This time she could plan her own wedding, pick her own dress and flowers. Last time she'd had no say at all. Maybe that was why it was so easy to walk away. That and the fact that she'd found her fiancé Brad in bed with another man. However, planning her own wedding didn't remove the need to tell her parents. Checking her watch, she calculated that it was 8 a.m. in California. Taking a deep breath, she dialed their number.
Madison residence.
Tess recognized the voice of her mother's longtime secretary.
Hello, Constance. It's Tess. Is Catherine there?
Tess had called her parents by their first name since she was 16 years old. She'd done it to be disrespectful, but her parents didn't seem to mind, which only highlighted their indifference.
They're eating breakfast, Tess.
Constance replied in the same cool, aloof tone her parents used on her.
It's 8 o'clock. They should be done now.
They've changed their schedule.
Tess wasn't sure why she waited for more information. Probably because she lived in the real world now where people communicated back and forth.
Can you give her a message?
If it's important.
Tess wondered what constituted important. A wedding probably didn't, but she knew if she left a message about her wedding, she wouldn't have to call back.
Tell them I'm getting married.
She didn't wait for a reply before hanging up, mostly because she didn't think she'd get one. She knew her mother would check her email after breakfast, so Tess sent a short email about getting married, Jack's name and the date. She shook the heavy feeling that always followed when she was dealing with her parents and went online to research wedding planning. 30 minutes later, her email chimed, and while she hoped it was Jack, she knew it would be her mother. Taking a deep breath, she opened the email.
Tess, I suppose your choice of New Year's Eve is done to once again cause angst in the family. As you know, that evening is the Bay-to-Bay ball, and everyone always expects your father and me to attend. Of course, that's nothing compared to the fact that you're planning to marry a man with no connections, no family background. Just because someone has money doesn't mean he belongs in our world. You will likely do what you want without a consideration to your father and me. You've always been that way. At the very least, you need to send invitations to everyone on the list I've attached. Considering the man, I nearly thought against it. But you're a Madison and our daughter. People will expect to be invited. However, I urge you to rethink the date, and especially the man. Catherine.
Tess sighed. She wondered when she'd give up the hope that her parents would treat her like a daughter and not a nuisance. Of course, she wouldn't reconsider the man. She supposed she could reconsider the date. She'd forgotten about the Bay-to-Bay ball. But it wouldn't change how her parents treated her. They saw changing the date as an obligation to the family.
I've come to finish what I started.
Just the sound of his voice released the tension that had been building. She turned her head, gave him a smile.
I'm very busy.
Too bad.
He pulled her from her chair and pushed her against the desk.
This is my office. Maybe I could be the boss and chase you around the desk.
Whatever floats your boat, baby.
He picked her up and carried her to the couch.
Where's all this energy coming from?
She asked, as he pressed small kisses to the nape of her neck.
It's been there all morning.
I don't believe it. You left me without a glance back. I don't think you find me attractive anymore.
Let's see.
Talk is cheap, Jack.
His eyes flashed,
I'm the boss here, remember?
and with that, she took control.
Jack lay with Tess nestled against him on the couch, trying not to make any move that would result in them ending up on the floor.
Are you going to tell me what had that doom and gloom look on your face that always terrifies me?
He moved just enough to kiss her temple.
Terrifies you?
That's the look you have when you start building walls and becoming that cool and aloof Tess. I have a Pavlovian response that makes me worried you're going to kick me out. It's your house.
Jack gave her his, "You know what I mean, look." She stared into his eyes, but he wasn't sure what she was looking for.
You know I'm committed, don't you?
Yes, but your instinct to protect your heart are strong.
Not with you.
She reached up and touched his face.
I trust you completely.
He leaned forward, kissed her, wanting her to know just how much her words meant. He hadn't been kidding about being terrified. He knew Tess loved him, but he also knew she experienced rejection in her life that sometimes caused her to shy away from people.
So who are you trying to protect yourself from?
She sighed.
My parents, they don't like the date for the wedding. Or the man I'm planning to marry.
They don't know me.
Doesn't matter, you have no connections.
Connections?
When I was a teen, I loved Jane Austen. She made fun of families like mine, who put value only in money.
I have money.
And breeding in connections. They're like Sir Walter and Elizabeth, and I'm lowly Anne from Persuasion.
I don't know that book. I know Pride and Prejudice.
They're Aunt Catherine.
Ah, snooty. So am I Darcy and you Elizabeth Bennet?
Actually, I think I'm Darcy and you're Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tales from the Heart. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will be back to find out what happens next. Now remember, you can listen to the full uncensored episodes over at reamstories.com/Jenna Harte. Just click the follow button and then select With This Ring IV Kill Audio to listen to all the episodes. If you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get With This Ring IV Wed from your favorite ebook retailer or save by buying direct from me. All the details and links you might need are just a click away in the description. And don't miss the next episode. Hit the subscribe button so you know when it's posted. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, this is Jenna Harte wishing you peace, love, and happily ever after.